Hey Photoshoppers, in this lesson I'm going to show you how to use the new generative AI features to quickly do some product mockups like this. I have two downloadable files for you to play around with, thanks to the photographers over at Unsplash for taking these photos and sharing them with us. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is start a new project, 1500 by 1500 pixels, 300 resolution, just to get a nice square that we could use for social media and all kinds of things. It's a really important thing to think about what you want your image to look like ahead of time. As we've seen in other lessons, when you start working with the Gen AI features, you'll need to do it in the proper order, basically layering from the background to the foreground elements. To add a background to this image, I can actually just select this little generate image button. It brings up this window where we can add a prompt such as a flat mint green paper backdrop, top view, texture, and here we can choose content type. I'm going to choose photo. If you have a reference image, you can add that here. If you want to choose a specific effect, you can choose one here. I'm just going to click generate. And by using that button, it's going to create an image that matches this canvas size. So here we have a couple mock-ups and some pretty good ones. I actually like the green here the best. I might just click generate again to see if we can get some more options because I want that paper backdrop to cover the entire image. And there's a way to get there with this existing image if we don't get another one in this prompt, which I didn't get exactly what I wanted. So what I'm going to do here with this is I'm going to take my lasso tool. Actually, I'm going to take the polygonal lasso tool. And what I want to do is basically have this texture that's on the left of the frame the same on the right. So what I'm going to do is make a selection over this right side that I want to remove or replace, and just a little bit of this paper on the left-hand side, and then just choose generative fill and generate, leaving that prompt blank, and it's going to take what's on one side of the image and hopefully replace what's on the selection with that. As you can see here, it did that for two of these, which I like. I'm going to add our shampoo bottle to it. And that's looking pretty good. Now the green that I use here is a little bit different than the green here. And I actually like the green that I used here. I think I typed in lime green, not mint green. And it's important to get your colors right for your backdrop before we start doing any sort of additional additions using the Gen AI. So what I'm going to do is actually add a hue and saturation adjustment above our backdrop layers, and now just drop the hue to make it a little bit more of that mint, that lime green rather, that matches our bottle here. And I think that looks pretty good. Now we can add some different elements using any sort of selection tool to make an area selection, and then here in the contextual taskbar, if you don't see that, go up to Window, Contextual Taskbar, and then click down here, and we're going to type in mint leaves. And I'm going to add that top view keyword so that it creates something that looks like you're taking that photo from that top view for that nice flat lay look. And we can see the options. Now, if there's one that we like, but we want some similar options to see what it comes up with, we can go to that variations over in the properties panel and choose generate similar. I'm actually just going to put my property panels out here so I can see it. And then I'm going to close my libraries and adjustments so I can see more of my layers. And here we have a few different options. So you can pick one that you want, and then you just kind of keep going through this in the areas that you want. And I would just use the same prompt. So we've added another one. For this mock-up, I added these rosemary sprigs. Another thing I did was I added a drop shadow to my shampoo bottle just to have it sort of blend in a little bit or feel like it's a part of this design, like that. I'm going to try to get like a rosemary sprig that somewhat covers the front of our bottle. Let's see if this can work. Make that selection there. I think this one is probably the best. Now, to get this to cover the bottle here would be a little bit of extra work because we would need to remove the background from this creation, and we could do that. Another thing to note though too is that it recreated part of this bottle that I want to actually remove. So I'm just going to select that layer mask that was created, use my brush tool, resize it. That's the Option Control button on a Mac, and dragging left or right. That would be Alt Command, I believe, on a PC. And then I'm just going to erase that part of this layer mask that is created there. Now you'll note that if I take this and I love that sprig that it created and just copy it and put it over on this side of the image, it doesn't really work because that paper texture in the background is a slightly different color. It creates this photorealistic view of the paper that has a little bit of lightness and shadow on it depending on where the light is coming from. And so you can't just do that. So the easiest way to do this would be to try to blend it together just by taking a brush to that layer mask and brushing out the edges. Now this is just a very quick mock-up, so we'd probably want to spend more time or just create a new generative fill layer and a new sprig in that top left corner. Now something I'm going to add here, let's see if I could add just over on this left-hand side, is maybe some water droplets. Yeah, something like that. I don't like the mint leaves. I don't need the mint leaves, but even if I just take these ones here and then I get rid of the part that I don't like with my brush, something like that's cool. And then I think I'm going to do the same thing over here. This one's pretty good, but I want to generate similar to see if there's some more variations we can create that look a little bit more similar to these ones on the left. And that one's pretty good. So this is a very quick way to mock up this product design. Let's jump over to the beer one. So here's the original that I came up with. I'll show you how I did this. It has a few different elements that I want to talk through. So I'm going to start a new project, same as that 1500 one we did before. For the beer mockup, I use sort of this leather texture in the background. So what I'm going to do is create a prompt for, let's do a dark brown, smooth leather texture, top view photo, and generate and see what that comes up with. I think brown might contrast with that green beer can pretty well. And these are looking pretty good. So you can generate some new ones if you want, but I kind of like this. I like the lighting of this one as well. So now what I'm going to do is add my beer can. Something like that looks pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit of a vignette to this, as you can see I did here. And that was just with a solid black color. And then I went into that layer mask and I took a big soft brush and I kind of just created a custom little vignette with the corners a little bit darker. And I dropped the opacity just a little bit. Something like that to start out with is pretty good. Now, next what I did was I wanted to have this beer can on a bed of beer hops. And so what I did was I actually turned off the beer can. I got my rectangle marquee tool and I selected this area where the beer can is, and I wrote in bed of beer hops, top view. And I got a few options. Now, this one might be the best one. Let me see if there's some more variations. And that's pretty good. Now, what I might do just to create some more hops on the edges, because if I put my beer can on top of this, I don't really see it, is now that we have these hops, I'm going to go here and here, make this selection, and bed of beer hops, top view, just to try to expand that bed of beer hops. This is what you don't see if you're watching these quick tutorials on YouTube or other places. where people are quickly creating these images, but it takes a little bit of extra work. Now it's still just a little bit too small, so let me go ahead and select this whole area down here. And because it has some beer hops to reference, it should create hops that are similar and match the ones in the rest of the image. And I think something like that would look good. So let's put our beer can on top. All right, so that's good. It's just sort of like this background element. Next, we're going to add our barley sprigs. So I'm going to use my lasso tool. Make this selection over here. And I actually like how this created it more as just like in the background rather than like an individual sprig like that, although that looks pretty cool too. And this is just what you have to do. You got to play around with our prompts and see what it comes up with. If you want a very specific size or shape of a barley sprig, what you could do is you could create a very specific selection that looks exactly like what you were going for. Here it kind of took what I was doing with that corner and filling it in, which I think actually works pretty good. Now I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow to our beer can. And then what I did here was I added these beer splashes. So similarly, I have my selection tool. I just drew over on this side, and then I typed in my prompt, splash of swirly beer liquid. And this is what I got before. I got some beer bottles, a couple that looked okay, so I'm going to reprompt this. Abstract splash of swirly beer liquid, photorealistic. And something like that looks pretty good, although I kind of want it to be coming from behind our bottle. So I might generate similar just to see if it comes up with something. If not, I will move my selection to a different area and reprompt. Not exactly what I was going for. So let me go ahead and create a new area. Something like this looks pretty good. That one's okay. I'm going to generate a few similar. Now let's add one over here. So I finally got a few options that I liked. Now this took probably 5-10 minutes of prompting, reprompting, playing around with the prompt. So I don't want you to think this is going to be super easy. What I'm going to do now is duplicate this layer that has that sort of vignette and put this on top of everything, and then sort of bring back some of this just to create more of like a vignette for our product itself. And then the last thing I'm going to do is try to get sort of some hops on top of our beer can. So what I'm going to do is just add a little circle, and that looks pretty good, and it adds that shadow which sort of blends everything together. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the right. I like that one. And you can just keep going with it, but I think this looks pretty darn cool. And all of this was done right here within Photoshop, not using any stock photo except for our original product. Everything else created completely with Gen AI. Like you saw and heard me talk, though, this isn't a quick thing. This takes time. It takes prompting. Each of these probably took a good 10 to 15 minutes, which is a lot easier than having to take these photos, find stock photos, and the textures and everything else. But it still does take some time. Thank you so much for watching this lesson. I hoped it helped you to learn a few new things and tips and tricks. And we will see you in another lesson. Cheers.